But I honestly don't think you should be using your iPhone or Android or whatever for photography. I'm just gonna say it, I think smartphone photography and videography just kind of sucks. And on top of that,
no, just no. What's up? I'm Lobobachev, and this video is actually a response to a recent video Matti Haapoja made in which he addresses smartphone photography and videography, and I really disagree with him. Shit, I stepped on a piece of shit. Oh, this is what I get when I actually disagree with a person that's way more skilled and experienced than me. First of all, if you haven't actually seen his video, I do suggest checking it out because this, after all, is a response video to his video, so I do suggest checking it out. So here's the link. Now just wait here without stepping on any more pieces of poop. Yeah. Okay, so first things first, I own a Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus with a Canon 80D, which I am filming on, with a 10 to 18mm lens and, wait, and a 50mm Plastic Fantastic 1.8 lens. That's it. Oh, and also the microphone on top. My photo/video background comes from smartphones because I've never actually owned a modern DSLR until the past 2 months. So everything up until now was either by asking some friends for their cameras or using a smartphone. Now, I do have to say that I'm not as professional or experienced as Matti is, due to the fact that he has tons of experience. I don't have any. I'm not even a professional. But I do have to disagree with him on this, because even if I'm not a professional, I do know more than most beginners because I've been a beginner for a long time. There goes my credibility, but yeah. No, a photo doesn't always... Now, a photo doesn't always need to have shallow depth of field. Everybody loves bokeh, but it isn't always needed. It's not always necessary. And there are times where it doesn't even look good and it doesn't reach the point of the photo you're making or the video. Sometimes you do want everything to be seen, like this for example. Or, for example, recently I took a photo of this small apple, and I also wanted to include the apple tree. The problem was that I did try to have background blur, but with the 50mm lens it was too much. When I stopped out in the aperture, it just becomes too dark and I have to bump up the ISO. That doesn't work as well, because when you do bump up the ISO, you do get grain and noise, which is not... Sometimes you want that as well, but most of the times you want to stay away from that. After that, I tried with the 10 to 18mm lens, but first it was too dark because the aperture is already 4.5 to 5.6, and also it has a lot of distortion. So what did I do? I picked up the smartphone and I shot it with that. Now, the smartphone does have an aperture of 1.5 to 2.4. That does make a good photo because it has a lot of light in it, which I can use in the manual settings, which I have, which I'm actually going to address later. It doesn't have background blur, but that's the point. I don't want that much background blur in it. So the photo I took with the smartphone is the one that I used on Instagram. Okay, fun thing just happened. I was looking for the next location while I saw this. Look at it. It's just so beautiful. I guess it's time for some B-roll. Okay, I think you're safe. Look at this. I should take this off. Okay, almost the same location, but a different day, because my phone's battery just died. Now, I believe Peter McKinnon made a video long ago saying that if you limit yourself to one lens, you might get more creative with it. You have less options. The less options you have, the more creative you will get with them, because you have to experiment more, especially in the beginning, because you will learn how that lens works. So you have to use the best skills you've got to make a shot look good with that lens. Yes, as a professional, you do need more lenses because you know what lens you need for a certain type of shot. But as a beginner, it's really overwhelming to use a lot of lenses. So fixed focal length's not that much of an issue. Yes, it is when you get more professional, but right now, as most of your viewers are beginners, I don't think that's a problem. Okay, I don't want to start an iPhone versus Android battle, but unlike the iPhone, most Android flagships have manual controls and raw photos built into the actual camera app that comes with the phone. I can control everything on the Galaxy S9. You've had that since the Galaxy S6. Yes, there are limitations. Like for example, the second camera doesn't actually have manual controls, and Samsung have locked it so that other apps won't be able to use manual controls for the second camera as well. iPhone hasn't. That's good. With an external app, you can use the second camera with manual controls. But again, that's from third-party apps, which usually suck. Different brands put on different limitations for their phones. Sony Xperia devices are totally shit, even in 2018. Now, stabilization really depends on what you have. I have a 1080p camera and I export my videos in 1080p. That means that I can't use warp stabilizer that much, if at all, to essentially stabilize my footage really well. Even with the Canon 10-18mm lens, which is image stabilized, you can't stabilize all of the shaky footage like you would with the gimbal or with the glide cam. Now, smartphones on the other hand have optical image stabilization. As well, on top of that, 4K footage. That 4K stabilized already footage can be stabilized even more with the warp stabilizer, because if you're exporting in 1080p, you will be able to crop in a lot more than with 1080p to 1080p, because with 1080p you are always going to lose pixels and resolution, while 4K, for example, you don't lose that much. It all depends on lens quality and sensor quality from that point on, which for smartphones it is decent. Plus, if you really want good stabilization, you're always going to have to buy a gimbal or a glide cam. Just invest in an actual camera. Yes and no, because if you already have a smartphone in your pocket, or for the price of around $300 to $350, you can get a Galaxy S7. You can essentially get a 4K camera, optical image stabilization, a good calibrated color accurate screen. The screen is so good, in fact, that you can actually color grade with it. Because most beginners don't have color accurate screens. They use their laptops that probably cost $300 to essentially try and edit something with manual controls, raw photos, with the advantage of actually being a smartphone and being with you all the time. After all, a lot of the times the best camera is the camera you have with you. Here are a couple of shots, for example, which I would have not taken if I didn't have my smartphone with me. Plus, the reason everybody was using their smartphones is because for vacation photos, they're already good enough. They're better than point and shoot cameras, and they're way more usable than them. So investing in a camera for only vacation photos and not professional work is stupid, in my opinion. I even think that you should try and learn manual controls and manual everything before you even invest in a camera. In the end, there will always be a debate on whether you should use smartphones for photography. But in this day and age, as a learning tool, as something you can actually use every day in spontaneous moments, you don't have to pull it out, you don't have to set it up at all, you just point and shoot. That's the magic of them, because you will always be able to pull out a smartphone way faster than you would pull up a camera out of any camera bag. But I am using a DSLR with a lens and a microphone on top to record this video. I am going with better quality. But as a beginner, as someone who just wants to learn because it looks fun, a smartphone does the perfect job, because smartphones, in my opinion, are good enough to learn with, to explore with, to just point and shoot and get good quality images, to focus on composition and learning composition and story. Instead of just going with the best settings, with the best camera, with the best quality camera, you're still going to suck because you don't even know how ISO works. One of my best videos to date is with a crappy 4K action camera that cost $200, and I recorded most of the footage in 1080p at 120 frames per second, which is with a really low bitrate and with a really bad quality. But a lot of people like that video because of the story in it, because of the transitions, because of the adventure in it. A lot of people liked the vibe of the video, and that's what it all boils down to. The skill, the vibe, the content that you're producing, not the camera you're using to produce that content with. So as a beginner, my suggestion is to try out your smartphone, to begin with a smartphone, because it is enough. Focus on the craft, focus on improving yourself, and then focus on what camera gear you have. The moment when you feel limited with a smartphone, that's the moment when you should buy a camera. Not before that. When you actually feel the limits you have. Learn, make, repeat. That's it. If you use the excuse that you have a crappy, shaky smartphone that doesn't even record 1080p, use that to your advantage. You make vintage videos, make vintage stuff. So in the end, just shoot with whatever you have, because you will regret it if you don't. I am considering of making mobile photography and videography videos, so if you do want to check them out, please consider subscribing and following the channel. Also, if you like this video and you like the message that it spreads, please give it a thumbs up and share it, because it'll help me out a lot. Okay, that's it for me, Lil Bachev, over and out, because it's already starting to rain and I don't have a jacket. Bye!